Okay, are you seeing my screen?
Yes, we're on.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to be in the stage site, and so we're going to start here, and then I've got my vendor site opened up too, so we'll be able to show that side of a work order. All right, so when you first log in to the system, every user is going to be able to customize their dashboard. So you start at the top of the screen, there's tabs that have different information available to you. And your access will be based on your role. So you might not see every option that I have here when you log in. It'll be based on what your role is and what your job duties are. But one thing that everyone has and everyone can customize for their own use is the dashboard. And so when you first log in, your dashboard will be completely blank. And you'll be able to select from the different components that you can add by clicking on the plus sign in the top right corner. So this gives you a list of the different components that can be added to your dashboard. So we have different things like map, the ability to view emergencies, overdue work orders, work order kind of summary. We get into a PM program, proposals, and then some performance components as well. So once you've selected a component, you'll see it gets added onto your dashboard here, and you'll be able to customize it to show what you want. So every component has a little gear in the upper left corner, and this will allow you to select what view you want. So throughout the system, you're going to have portfolio or work zone views. And so a portfolio is a group of actual service locations. A work zone is an individual service location. And then the portfolios that you have access to will be based on, again, what you've been given. So I'm in the stage site, so I've just got a couple here. So once I choose a portfolio, I can also title my component so that I know what I'm looking at, because I can have multiple of the same component. You'll see I have another work order component here that has different information. So in this one, I've got a different portfolio set up, and so I can come in here and title this so I know what I'm looking at with regards to that. So these different types of components, you can add them, customize them for what you want to see. These are all click-throughs, so they'll take you to the work order lists, and we'll talk about those in a few moments. Here's another to-dos, which is a functionality that we'll talk about potentially using on work orders, and so this is showing my to-dos. This one is not customizable, it's just showing me what I have assigned to me to do. Then I can see emergencies is kind of a tile that will turn red at whatever kind of interval I want to show on it. So emergency work orders and when I want the dial to turn red for me. So then I have a map view, which has different sizes of the map. And this will allow you to see where work orders are in relation to your service locations. So when I pull in this information, I can set what type of work order data I want to see, and the map will show me little flags if it's able to identify where those locations are in the work orders. All right, the dashboard, it refreshes every 10 minutes on its own, but you can always use your browser refresh button anytime if you wanted to make sure that you had updated information in that browser, in your window here on your dashboard.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
Last week we kind of went over this, and I was wondering about it last week, but since you're logged in as the sysadmin, is that why you show 14 new tickets? Or if I'm logged in as me, am I going to see the total number of tickets or just tickets that are mine?
No, so work order components will show for whatever portfolio you have or whatever work zone. So we would all be seeing the same numbers if we're all looking at the same portfolio view.
Okay.
To-dos is my to-dos. So these are actually to-dos that are assigned to me. So that would be different by person. So Jason's might look, really awful because he's got a ton of them that I keep assigning to him. So his will look different.
Yeah, right. Go ahead, Lee.
So basically, under the CLA work orders widget, where it says new or open, if that says 200, that's for all of CLA, but then if I want to see how many of those are mine, it would be under the my to-dos?
Only.
No, you have to go into the work.
No, so this is just work orders. To-dos are actions that you can put on work orders and assign to yourself. So not necessarily that the work order is assigned to you or that you're working on it, but that you have some action you've added to it.
How would she see her specific work order?
If I want to see how many CLA work orders that I currently have under my name, where would that show up?
So that's not going to show up in the dashboard. We don't really have a component that will give you, because you guys will be listing yourselves as the work order owners, or possibly who's been assigned to the work order, and there's not a dashboard component to do that, so that would be seen under work order lists. So
I'll tell you after.
Okay.
So if we go to work order list, so the components, we're adding different components. I actually don't think you guys have been moved to our latest version 9.2. There's a couple new components in there, but none of them have to do with owners. So we're evaluating what components people want and adding new ones as we send out new releases.
Okay, hold on 1 second, Kristen. Okay, Kristen, go ahead.
Okay. All right, so work order list. So there's two ways you get to a work order list. So under the work orders tab, there's work order list. And then from the dashboard, if you were to click on one of these components, like I want to see what are these 15 new prime group work orders, if I click on that, that will also take me to work order lists. Unless my work order number is 1, then it'll take me directly into the work order details. So here's the work order list that's already filtered to show me the portfolio that was selected on my component with all of the new status of work orders. So this view gets filtered for me automatically based on what I'm clicking through on the dashboard. But if I want to start from a work order list, this is where I have the ability to also do some more customization. So there's a default view in the system when you come to the work order list page. And so you'll notice that at the top here, there's different filters that you can apply to the list. And so this default one just has some of the most commonly used ones, the scope selector here. This is where you can look at your portfolio or work zone again, work order status filter, completion time, and just a search. And then this filter allows you to add additional items to your filters so you can filter out other information. So you guys will be marked as owners, for instance, on the work orders. And so if I wanted to select and see who's the owner or find the owners of my work orders, I can do a search on that and narrow my list that way. So this will be a view that you could set up to look at work orders and get the owner information. So you have your different filters. You also, so in this table, you have different columns. All the way to the far right here, there's these two little boxes. Those will open up all of the columns that you can add to your view. So if I wanted to add the owner and flag, those are work orders that need some type of attention. So if I wanted to add things onto my view and maybe there's something I want to take off of my view, I could do that. I apply this, and now I'll have those columns that I've added put into my list. So there's always going to be this action column. I can also click and hold and drag these columns so that I can see them how I want to see them. So whatever makes sense for me to be working through my lists, I can put my columns however I'd like to see them. And I can also, if I click in between two columns, I can also make them larger and smaller. I can also click on a column and it will sort by that column, either ascending or descending. So I can make my column width larger or smaller so I can see more or less of the columns. I can add the columns that I want to see. Down at the bottom, you'll see that you can see up to 250 lines per page. So I can select what that view is going to be, how many work orders I want to see at a time. The bottom left will take me from page to page, so if there's more than 250 work orders. And the bottom right shows me the count and also gives me an option to refresh my list. So if I was making changes to something, I'd be able to see that list change. Then down at the bottom here, there's different actions that'll be available. We'll talk some more about these actions as we go through the work order process, but these actions here allow you to mass manage these work orders. So if I wanted to be able to do things like clear all of my flags, I'd be able to do those types of things right from the mass manage. So once you have a view that you've set up that you like, you can also customize your view to be able to always come back to it. So here, if I want to have my name as the owner in this view of work orders, and I want to set this up, I've added these columns that I want. I can actually come up here to my drop down, and I'd have the option to save my view. So save view as will allow me to save this personalized view. So I get this button here, save current as a new view, and I can name it whatever I want. Typically, I'm going to name it something that's going to tell me what the view is going to give me. So if it's work orders in a particular status, whatever, viewing my work order tickets, you can call the views whatever you want. These are all your personal views. So no one's going to be able to see these views but you. So once you've titled it, you'll just click the check box, the check mark, and that will then save the view to your list. So you can see now I could always go back to that view. If I go back to the default view, and then if I go to that view we just created, it will give me different views. Also in this list, there could be global views. So global views are managed by your system administrator. So if there's a view that people will be using all of the time, or everyone will need to have a view set up a certain way, then your system administrator can set up views that would show up in your list as well. So you're probably not going to have the Manage Global Views option. You'll just have a Save View As option, and that would allow you to create your own custom views that you can go back to time and again. All right, are there any questions about setting up the views or the work order lists?
No, it's pretty straightforward.
All right. So here.
Now, well, actually, I do have a question.
Okay.
Can you duplicate work orders on the screen instead of having to open a whole new work order every time? Or like if it's when we do like mold and stuff, we have to do like 2 or 3 work orders. Can you duplicate a work order instead of having to open a new one?
Jason said that's a parent-child.
You don't have to do those quotes anymore, though.
You don't have to what?
You don't have to do those quotes anymore.
Yeah, I don't think, from what Jason was telling me, we don't have to open multiple jobs anymore. It will all still run under one job.
Like remediation, build back, okay.
It'll just.
Oh, I do remember
It'll be a
stuff, okay,
parent-child
okay. Got it. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. There are ways to create a copy, but there's still information that you'd have to change depending on the customer. So I'll show you that as we go through the work order. So since we're focusing on work orders, we see the work order number. It is a link. There's also links through to the job record. So this is the actual location of the service and to the vendor record. If I click on the work order number here in my list, this is going to bring up the quick view of the work order. And so up at the top, I can see the work order number. This one has an exclamation point because it's an emergency priority. But I basically get some basic information, what the status of the work order is, where it was, who's the contact for this work order, priority, the location again, when this was expected to be completed, who's been assigned to do the work, what the work description is, and then the activity log for the work order. Depending on the status of the work order, you'll have different actions that are available. So we see this action list is a little bit limited on a completed work order, but I'll always see different actions that can be taken. These two arrows at the top will scroll through all of the work orders, so they'll give me a quick view of all the work orders in my filtered list here. So if I click next, it's going to take me to the next work order in the list, and that goes from wherever I started, and it'll scroll through. Throughout the system, there's going to be at the tops of the screens reminders in some cases. So the system will try to tell you or prompt you as to what needs to happen with the work order or what the next step was, or if there's some piece of information that's pertinent to working with this work order. So you'll see those little tips. They always typically come up with some color bar, not always a yellow bar, but it depends on the screen. This one is a warning, so it's coming up that way. So this just allows me to kind of quickly go through all of these work orders, and you'll see as I'm doing that, also these little options are changing. So the action buttons are being prompted based on things like the status of the work order, or so it's kind of prompting what's the next logical step of what's going to happen in the work order process here.
Now, I've got a quick question. Are we allowed to set, like if I've got a work order and my vendor is set to be at the store at 2 p.m. Central Time, is there a way that I can set a setting to where at 2:30 it automatically will flag that so that I can follow up?
Set a reminder of my to-dos.
Yeah, so you can set a to-do on the work order for whatever time that you want.
Right, but if I've got, on the my to-dos, will it pop up? Because I don't want it to be like, if I've got 5 that are all due at 2 o'clock, I don't want to get 5 pop-ups all of a sudden saying, you need to follow up on this. I would just rather it go into like a flagged thing. Am I allowed to set it up that way to work that way for me?
The system won't flag a to-do it won't put a flag on the work order for a to-do item, or when these items have gone, past their due by date. These work orders would show up on the dashboard in the overdue. So,
okay.
We would see things that are overdue. There's a component for overdue work orders. And so we'd be able to see how many work orders are overdue in a particular area. So that's past the completion time. You also have a to-do view. So you can see all of your to-dos. So if I wanted to see what my list of to-dos are, I can get a list of everything that I have to work on. And so I can even set a time frame, which ones are due in a certain time. So I can actually set that, what I have to work on today.
That description is what you type, correct?
Yes.
So you can make your note in there so it sticks out to you.
Okay.
But you could get one from Jay telling you need pictures or new pictures, or you could get one that said the invoice came in at a higher amount.
Okay.
A lot of the stuff we do via email is going to be done through here, the to-do or a updated note. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can manually flag work orders too. So if there's flag reasons that you guys are needing to communicate things on work orders, the flag reasons are customizable it's global, but your sysadmin can make changes to those if there's flag reasons. So if you're needing to flag a work order for someone else, like you received a phone call, someone needs to make a phone call back, you can, use flags, manually set a flag on a work order.
But there are no more colors. You have to go by your status.
I was gonna ask that, so
There's no more, there's no more colors.
The color is open. And
It's new, open, completed. I mean, that's basically it.
Is there a way you can highlight it yourself?
No.
Those colors help too.
I know, just keep it separate.
Yeah, look at all that white, you really have to read.
Yeah,
Hey, go ahead, Chris.
So that's what the description is for. I mean, if you put that description in there on your flag stuff or your overdue stuff, that's your note to you.
Yeah. Okay.
Is there a way to group this as a review?
I'm sorry?
You can sort by it, yeah.
You have to sort by that?
You could,
Okay.
yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
You go ahead, Kristen.
Okay. Okay, so if we're looking at a work order, so let me open this up. I'm going to click on View Details, and so that's going to take us from the quick view into the detailed view of the work order. And so up at the top left, we see our work order number. This one is showing me that there are pending to-do items on this work order. I see the status and all the information about the service location. I see who's the owner of the work order, and the last time it was updated. Top right here, I have all my different actions that I can take on this particular work order. As I go down the work order, I have different sections that are going to give me different details about the work order. So I have my work description. So this is what the service request is for. So I see my description of work. I have a scheduling and assignment section, the activity log, which is going to show me all the different activity that's been happening on this work order. So anytime you add notes or it's created or you change the assignment, pretty much all the updates you do will get date, time, name stamped in the activity log. You have a notes section. So any notes, anytime you're working on a work order and you have notes, you'll be able to add notes. The financial section of the work order, which is where the vendor invoice will end up coming in, and then the billing for the customer will be done. There's a punch list section. I'm not sure that we've decided how or if we're going to use this, but punch list is typically for a list of items that would be completed in doing this work. So maybe they're most commonly put together with PM type work orders where you have a set checklist of items that you want to have done. There's also a completion and verification section. So once the work order gets marked as completed, you'll see what the notes were for that completion. And then verification that the job was done when we contact the service location to find out if they were happy with the work and that it got done. There are some work order custom fields. We'll talk about those in just a moment. Some job custom fields. Here's the to-do section where I can set up my to-dos. Vendor quote. So if a vendor submits a quote to us through the system, if they're connected, job estimate documents. So if we're attaching any documents or the vendor's attaching any pictures, those will go into this document section. And a check-in and out log. So if the vendor is checking in and out on work orders, you'll be able to see those time entries separately. So each section of the work order, you'll notice on the left has an arrow so I can expand or collapse those different sections. So if there are sections that I'm not using on a work order or I don't need open all the time, I can collapse them And the system will kind of remember how I have my work order view set up. So if I've always got my financial section collapsed, the next work order I open, the financial section will be collapsed as well. And so then if I open it, the next work order will have that open. If I log out and log back in, it should look exactly like this with my sections that are collapsed. On the right, top right corner of each section is actions that can be taken. So if I wanted to assign this work order or change the schedule on it, I could do that in these sections. If I wanted to add a note, I can do that by clicking on the plus sign. So you're going to see plus is usually an add action, pencil is usually an edit action, and then you'll see some that are specific to the action, assign, and schedule. So I don't always have to go back up to the top of the work order to get my actions menu. If it's something that I want to do in a particular section, I can just perform that action from there. All right, so that's kind of an overview of the details, and we'll talk a little bit more about those. Let's go and actually create a work order. So there's a couple ways to create a work order. Before we talk about that, let me just talk really quickly about the Jobs tab. So Jobs and Spaces, this is going to show all of your different customer records. And so for each customer, there's a record in here which will have certain information. So it'll show, who their main customer is, the location. Up at the top, it'll show the satisfaction rating for work orders done, how many work orders that they have that are active. And there's a special notes section in the jobs record for things that aren't related to a work order. So that's what the unresolved notes are. So you see the address of the location in the space record. Contacts is going to include the contacts. If we have a contact name for this particular job location, like the manager on site, we'll store that in the system. All the work orders for this job, here's that note section. So this is notes for this particular customer. So maybe if you needed to store some type of information or you were helping to resolve an issue or negotiate something not related to a work order, you could use the notes section here to do that. If there's any PM schedule set up for this location, you'll have those there. There's a special instructions field here where you can store information that would go out or be prompted for every work order. So if there was some customer where you had to make sure that you collected a certain piece of information from them when you're putting in the service request, you could put that in the special instructions, or there's a special code to access the water heater room or something, you could put those in special instructions. There's documents. So these are related to a particular customer record. So if you had maybe a site plan for the parking lot of this particular location, and you wanted to store that for your reference, you could add that as a document or a contract with this customer, whatever you wanted to do. We have to-dos for customers, but you probably won't have a lot of actions that are directly related to a customer record. We have some custom fields that we'll be using in possibly as part of integration, and then approval templates, which if we decide to use proposals within the system, that's where we'll see what approval templates are attached to each customer. So I mentioned there's two ways to start creating a work order. So in order to create a work order, you're going to need to know what is the job location that you're going to be doing work at. And so you can either start from Jobs and Spaces by identifying the customer record, coming into that record. This would also give you a chance to see if you wanted any history, what work orders are going on or have been done at this location. So you can see this section allows you to do things, to filter on the different columns. So it's set up a little bit differently in this list. And so if I wanted to create a service request for this particular customer, I can come up to the action menu, and that's the prompt here, the little wrench, new service request. So when I click the menu down, it tells me that. So I could do that. That will automatically attach this customer for me. So that's one way I can start a work order. The other way is from work order lists. there's a plus sign up here in the top right, and this plus sign will allow me to start a brand new work order. So I don't necessarily have to go into the job record. My first step here will be to select where the job is being done. So I would be able to search here. I have portfolio, so I could come in and say, just show me everything in the prime group. I can do a search. So if I have the address, I can start typing in information, and it will narrow my list. And once I found the customer that I want to use, I would click on the little blue arrow and select it, and it'll take me to the next step in the work order process. So at the top of this,
hey, Kristen,
yeah.
Kristen, we have a question real quick.
I've got a question. Now, if I'm working a work order, let's say I'm working a roof leak, and it turns out, and I've got a work order going, and then it turns out it's an HVAC or there's another issue associated with that work order, do I have to then go into the, what was the tab view? Not the work order view, but the job, I guess? History. The history, to see if we've already done work on that, or is there a way that I can see the store history while I'm currently working? I have to jump back and forth.
Yeah, you'd have to duplicate.
No, you're also going to probably close the roofing because we may have a charge associated with that and do a new ticket for air conditioning.
Well, but if there's, because with a lot of my work, I do a lot of multiple things. Like if it starts out as a water leak, but it turns into mold or a busted pipe.
We'll cross that. Yeah, we'll cross that.
We can't.
No.
Okay.
Go ahead, Kristen.
Okay. So I think the answer is yes, you'd have to go research that in the jobs record is the easiest way, but not necessarily the only way. Okay, so my next step in the work order process is to type in contact information. You'll also notice on this screen it's telling me that there are 12 work orders that are associated with this location. And so while I'm creating a work order, if I start from here, then I do still have an option to see the other work orders associated to this location while I'm creating a new work order. So I can see these are all active work orders. So these are work orders that are in progress. So if someone is calling me about a lighting fixture, I can see we've already got 3 lighting fixture work orders here, so I probably don't want to create another one. I want to go and check out what these are for. If I wanted to see more details about that.
Well, they show quoted work.
What will it show if it was a, go ahead.
Will they show quoted jobs on that list?
What's a quoted job going to look like in the status?
White.
No.
Well,
what's the status?
If it's open, so open, or it'll probably be an open or possibly on hold, depending on. Because this is going to show you all active work orders.
So
but is a quote considered still active?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, because sometimes we'll
Most
quote,
likely.
them for
So
roof
we'll
repairs or.
Yeah, internally, we'll have to decide on how we tag
Okay.
that.
Okay.
This is high level, just.
Yeah, most
Did another
likely any
status be
job that
created or-
hasn't been completed is going to be in an active status, so not completed or not canceled. So open in progress, open, on hold, new. Probably if you're quoting something and you're waiting for a response, it's going to be on hold. So there'll be other places throughout the system where you'll see a work order number with this little box and the arrow going next to it, and that means that if I click on that link, it's going to open it in a separate window for me. So if I wanted to get more details about this work order, I click on the work order link. It's going to take me directly into the work order details for that work order that I clicked on, and it opened that in a separate tab. So if I go back here, I still have my work order that I was working on creating here, and I have this one open in another window as a reference if I needed to research that for some reason. Okay, so the next step in the work order is entering contact, and this is where we're going to enter the name of the rep who will be responsible for this work order. And so I just always choose Jason because I just like to pick on him and assign him all this work. All right, so then the next step after I've typed my name, so as the person working the work order, the next step is to select what the work order is for. So there's a couple different ways. This opens up the tree of all the different options to select from. There's also a type ahead or a search here. So if I'm looking for something in particular, I can start typing that in and I can see my options based on what I'm typing in, and then it will take me and open that up in the tree so I can see where it's at. So I selected painting interior, that's under painting, and so once I've selected that item, it will also show up for this particular item if there's any active work orders on painting interior, and if there's any warranties on painting interior, the item that I've selected. So again, if I click on active work orders for this, it's going to show me a list of all the active work orders for this particular item. And so I can see that there's one already open here. So again, maybe this isn't something I want to duplicate. And so I want to go see what this work order is for and possibly continue on this one instead of creating a duplicate work order. If I do want to continue on creating the work order, I then select a task. So this is kind of a description of the work. In most cases, this says repair, replace, or see description, those types of tasks. And so then in this box, you'll enter the details of what work needs to be done. So this is the description of the work. And so then I'll click on next, and I'll get my review and confirm screen. So here at this point, you can see I'm logged into the system as sysadmin, and so it has automatically put me as the owner of the work order. If I know who I'm assigning this work order to on my team, I can come and change that owner right from the beginning. Also, I see the location, the system based on the priority has associated my on-site and due-by dates. And if I needed to change the priority or any of those dates, I could click on that to change it. And then I see my work description. And so once I've confirmed all of that, I can go ahead and click on create. And now this work order, there's some custom fields. So requester, this is who is actually calling in the request. And if the customer has a reference number for their work order, their own work order number, that's their reference number. And so now this work order is created. So I have a work order number. Now it's ready to go to the next step. And you can see it's telling me that the work order is going to need to be assigned before it can be worked on. So if I go into view details, again, we'll see if this location was able to be mapped. It'll pull up on the map. I can see who the owner of the work order is. See all my details. This is in new status. And so on this work order, then whoever's been assigned to work on this will be coming in to review what the work is for and assigning the work order to an appropriate vendor to do the repairs. And so here again, I have all my different sections of the work order. Here's where those work order custom fields come into play. So what we might get the location. And I think in live site, we might have put a space for his phone number too. I'm not sure if we did that or not. But I have who that person is, and you can see those job custom fields we saw in the job record are pulled into the work order so you can reference them as you need them. Now, in the staging site, we have some to-dos that are automatically being added to the work orders. That's why Jason has so many. I don't know that we've turned that on in the live site, but it's an option for us. So there's to-do templates based on the priority. So this has automatically added some to-dos for me onto this work order. So they'll automatically be there. So we can create a list if there's different steps that we want to have on there. So the first thing I'm going to need to do with this work order is to determine who I'm going to assign it to. And so I'm going to be looking for a vendor. So if I go to edit assignment, this is where I can get to users. That's all of your internal team. Vendors will be all of your vendors that you'll be able to find in the database. Now I'm in the stage site, so we're only going to see the test vendors to come up. But you'll be able to, the system will pull in typically the specialty of the work order. I don't have them mapped here in the staging site, but you'll have a list of all your specialties so you can narrow the list of who you're looking for. The system automatically pulls in the zip code of the service location, and so it helps you to narrow down vendors. So if I was looking for vendors that work within a certain number of miles of this location zip code, I can narrow the list to be able to find vendors. Now, because I've just got some test vendors, or if I wanted to see all of the vendors that are in the system, I can remove the zip code, and that will expand my list to show me who I want to find. If I know the name of the vendor I'm looking for, I can type in, and I'd be able to get right to that vendor record. So this
you
vendor...
still have to call the vendor to make sure. We'll still have to call the vendor to make sure they can go and how far they are. Like, because we've had where vendors will show up, but they're 4 or 5 hours away in actuality, but they service the area.
Yeah, so the vendor records, when the vendors connect to the system, they are putting in their service areas. So the system narrows them down based on the information the vendor has provided. So that's why my vendor wasn't coming up, because I think my vendor's address and service area is listed as Oregon. And so I was nowhere near this location to come up. So when I removed the zip code, I found her when I searched on the name. So here in this list of vendors, I'll see their name. I'll see whether they have certificates of insurance on file, and if they're current or expired, if they're connected or not. And this is important because the process for working with connected vendors is different than working with non-connected vendors. This is also going to show me how many work orders they have assigned. Now, when you first open your screen, it may not look like that. There are certain columns you can add or remove. So if there was things I didn't care about, but things that I did, I can change my list so it shows me something different in the list. So you can also move those columns around. So all of your screens like this are customizable for you, whatever makes sense for you. So once I found my vendor I want to assign it to, I'm going to find my actions column. Let me move that back because it'll be on the right-hand side here. So I click on select. At the top, it's going to show me that it's currently unassigned, and I'm going to reassign this to Kristen Service Company when I click on save. So if I click on save, now the assignment is going to be to Kristen Service Company. Now I know they're a connected vendor, and so the next step in any way, when we're going to send the work order to the vendor, is to actually send it. So that's what I've been prompted up at the top. Now you guys might be calling the vendor to make sure they can actually do this work and get an initial cost or whatever you're going to do before you actually send it to them. There's also, in the financial section of the work order, is an NTE, so that's not to exceed. So I'm not sure if you guys reset those in the live site to be higher than $0. But before I'd be able to send this work order to the vendor, I'd want to make sure that there was an NTE for them so they would be able to submit an invoice if they needed to. So I think you guys make a call to this vendor, and the vendor says, yeah, we can get the work, and we estimate that to be about $250, and you tell them okay. So you would come down here and edit the NTE to whatever you're going to approve or give them for this, initial visit. So then the vendor won't be able to submit an invoice over that amount. And I would also probably add a note. So, And so when I add a note to the work order, I can choose whether I want to make that note public or not. So making it public would mean that this note would be available to the customer if they were a customer that's using the customer portal. So we by default are making all the notes private so that you can make a decision, is this something that a customer would be able to see if they're logged in through the portal? And I'm not sure we've identified which customers you guys might set that up for. The majority of your notes will probably be private notes, things that you're dealing with the vendor on, things like that. So once I've spoken to them, I know that they're connected, so I'm going to send them the work order. Is there a question?
Okay, go ahead. So when writing a PO, does it automatically come up with a number?
No, we have to assign it.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Kristen.
All right. So when I go to send the work order to the vendor, this will come up with some information that's already configured. So it took whoever is the contact, so that's the service rep's name, and there's some information that we've configured into the messages. If I want the vendor to send me a quote before they do this work, I can click that quote button on, and that would send a message to the vendor letting them know that you require a quote, so they won't be able to actually complete out the work order until they've got a quote that's been approved or rejected. So when I click on send, because this vendor is connected, I'm going to click on send, and now the connected vendor is going to be responsible for this work order from now on. So the status will be new up until the point the vendor accepts the work order, or if they reject it, then it will stay new. If they accept it, it'll go to an open status. So when I sent it to the vendor receives a message through the system that they've got a new work order for them that's waiting their acceptance. And so they can either reply to this email and accept the work order, or they can log into their system and accept or reject the work order. So these options are configured by the vendor. So the vendor, when they join the network, when they get connected, they set up the email addresses and the alerts that they want to get through the system and where they want to get them. So connected vendor is going to update the status. So I'm just going to reply back to this email really quickly. All right, so when I send that email, if we refresh this work order, you're going to see the status will change as soon as my email goes through. And we'll change to an open status.
They have a time range they have to accept it by, and they have a time range on when they say they'll be on site,
When they have to have
and when they have to have the work done.
Yes. So yeah, so here I can see all of those. So in the acknowledge by, they are all set by the priority, and those are your guys' global SLAs that you've set on them. And so so this one I had until 1 p.m. To accept this work order. That's the acknowledge by time frame. And so you can see I also had a view on this. Yeah.
Will you briefly just kind of tell us, this came up last week, how the time, we're at Eastern time, if we were working with a sub in California, is it going to say 1 p.m. for them? You know, or is it an hour from when they got it, or what is it? The
times are on the work order based on the time zone of the service location that we set up.
Okay. So in theory, those acknowledged by maybe after 5 p.m. Eastern time, but they'll fall in the Colorado 2-hour window or whatever it is.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You'll see all the times relating to this work order in whatever time zone is set up for this work zone here.
No, yeah, I got it. We just wanted to clarify what the time, so we knew what the time zones were. So, yeah. Thank you.
And so when I look at this work order log, when I created this work order, this is telling me 11:52. Well, it's not even 11:52. Right, my my time. I'm not sure that these zones were set up with the right time zones. We might have to check that out, or we might have made a decision to set everything to Eastern time. I don't remember.
Okay, that's fine.
But so I can see in the log, everything in this log is being logged in the time according to the time zone that's set up for this zone too, just as, or I don't think that really affects you much other than if you're doing work on the West Coast, then your times might be off if we're setting those up to have Pacific time, things like that.
Right, and that's what we were trying to confirm or figure out,
Yeah.
if it's a, broken window that has to be done before we can leave, but it's only, 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon in California. So that's what we're trying to figure out.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We just needed to know.
Okay, so then you can see these to-dos are set up for me. They were already set up. So, I mean, I could on this, one of these to-dos was to check that the vendor accepted the work order. So if I were to look at my to-do list for that particular work order, that's going to come up. Those are actually, I think, assigned to Jason now. So I believe this is the work order we just created here. So I can see these 2 to-dos got added to my list. And so if I wanted to check on vendor acceptance, it's telling me what I want to do. If I bring up what's called objects, so it's attached to a work order, I can see the vendor picked this up. So I didn't even have to go into the work order using my to-do list here. I can see my action. The action log tells me that this has been picked up. I actually see the status is open, so I know the vendor accepted this, so I can come in right here and mark my to-do as completed. Actually, that was the wrong one. I meant to click on this one.
So do we get notifications, like if a vendor gets accepted, and I see that we can see it under here, if I'm working on something else, do I get a notification that it's been accepted, or do I have to run that go back to that to-do list to see that it's done?
You will not get notified that a work order has been accepted.
Is there a way we can, or do we have to keep going back to each individual job team if it's gotten picked up?
Right, because like if I'm working on multiple jobs and I've got 2 or 3 that I'm trying to get scheduled, and I have to stop in between each one to go back to see if the first guy picked up, I'm double working. Is there a way to set up a notification that just says, whether it be via email, whether it be a little pop-up saying, hey, this job has been accepted? So that I don't have to go back into my to-do list and stop what I'm doing currently to go and check and make sure that that's been accepted or picked up.
But you would have already talked to the contractor before you sent the work order.
But
if you just
Not really.
you can't
Not-
know until
You don't have to
email it back
really
to
talk to them to get your information.
Oh, I will definitely talk to
Well,
them.
yeah, I mean, we'll
Send them
definitely be
schedule.
calling and scheduling and all of that.
Yeah.
But what if they don't pick up, like, you
I know
can
what you're
talk to the
saying,
guy,
yeah.
saying, yeah, I'll do it, that's fine. All right, I'm gonna send you a work order. We send it, but then they never accept it on their end through the system.
What would you do now? What would you do now?
But that's what I'm saying. If I haven't,
What would you do now?
Call us up till they
Call us
or
up.
find somebody new.
but how do I know? That's what I'm
You
trying to
don't know
say.
now.
You'll get notified. It'll
You
pop
don't,
up as a
if
flag.
you
and say,
set up
"Pick
a
it up."
sub, Meg sends them the paperwork, and they don't go, you don't know until you follow up with the sub. Or
But
the
no,
store.
but at the same, I do know that the PO went out because it changes statuses.
You're still
I
gonna know
can see the color
you're
change.
still
when
gonna
I
know
log
you
in.
sent you're still gonna know you sent the paperwork. That doesn't mean they
It'll change to
gonna do the work.
open once they pick it up, and it'll pop up as a flag.
So once they pick it up on their end, it'll change to open.
Yeah.
But
It'll
how
go
does
to
it notify us?
It'll
that
be,
it's changed to open?
on the dashboard, it'll pop up as a flag. You'll see.
So my answer is yes, we have to look at the dashboard. We
That's
have
why
to go back
refreshes
into
every
the
year.
refresh.
Know the status,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
You always keep an extra window open like this, so they keep refreshing so you can see.
Okay. So yeah, you can set up your to-dos to have time frames. If there are there are customer notifications around some of those actions. So Gib and Jason, we can have a conversation at a later time if that becomes a necessity, we can do some kind of duplicate setup to maybe force some of those alerts those notifications they might be looking for, but I'm always hesitant to do it we'll have to talk about it some more because it will lead to more administration for you guys to do.
No, I understand, and right, we need to talk about it anyway, because we had a case in a live ticket where the sub submitted the invoice through Corrigo, and we didn't know, because we didn't know what to look for.
Well, and that goes up, like, what about an estimate? Are we gonna get, like, if they submit an estimate through Corrigo, are we gonna know without opening that ticket, going down to?
Yeah, like you see the orange flags, the flag will pop up. As long as you have that set up, you'll see the flag there, so it notifies you.
Okay, you have to custom it.
But you'd have to customize every single job like that.
Well, no, you just, when you format
when
or
you have
set up
vendors,
all
when
your
vendors
tabs,
are connected, yeah, so when vendors are connected, I mean, you could change your view to make sure flags are there. You're also going to see flags come up on the the dashboard. So you'll be able to see that we've got flagged work orders, and that will actually narrow down to just my flagged work orders list. So I can just see these 5. I don't have it. We don't see the flag reasons here, but we can add that. But there's certain actions that the vendor does that will get flagged, so you will get notified. If they submit a quote, if they reject it instead of accept it, then you'll get a flag on that. So you'll know they didn't accept the work order that came through. If they add a message, if they add a note onto their work order, that will flag the work order as well.
Now, what if another coordinator makes a note? Will that flag the work order? So
Yeah.
like,
If you're
I'm
out,
at lunch,
if somebody's sick,
somebody else steps in, makes a note and talks to my vendor, and then I need to see so that I'm still caught up when I come back from lunch, will that be log of communication? Will that log a communication and let me know that somebody else has touched my work order?
You'll see the activity log.
Not without going into it.
Nope, you can have it set up, the activity log set up on your views, your list view.
On your dashboard?
No, the list view, you can have, what you call it, like that bar right there. You can have like your activity log.
Is that on there?
It should be. I have mine set up like that.
You can manually flag a work order. So if I took a message for someone who is on who left early for today, and I can't do anything, I could flag the work order so the next person would see it. So it would be flagged.
to do.
Or I could send them a to-do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That's fair.
Those are the things we have to work through on ours. That doesn't have anything to do with her.
All right.
Yeah, so if I go back to my, my view here, maybe I want to, so I think one of these. I don't know why my columns, it doesn't want to give me bigger columns. So here's this work order we were working on. So if I came in and put a note, I always have an option to flag a work order myself. So these flag reasons can be, your team can customize those for what you might need. And so I can put in, there's a flag, a new note, or needs an action or something. So, I can always put in comments and that would flag the work order. So I can do that manually. Okay, so let's go back into that work order details really quick here. So right now in the live site, I don't think those to-dos are actually being added automatically. They certainly can be.
I'll get with Jason on that and see what he decided.
Okay, but I can come in at any time and add a new one. So if I just come in, add a to-do, because I'm the owner of the work order, so it's automatically assigning Jason, who's listed as the owner. But, I could type in any other message or any other action I want to take on this work order, and I can assign it a due by date and time, so it'll show up in my to-do list. And I could actually pick someone else to assign this to from the list as well. So if it's not me that needs to take the action, I could give that to someone else. And then I can set my date and time. So maybe I want to give them a call before I leave this afternoon. So I can add in a to-do item onto the list.
Nice.
And that will flag it on their dashboard, and they can go in and read the to-do, like, please read the notes or whatever.
Yep.
And then that way they can.
So here's my
How do you know
to-do list assigned to Jason. So he would now see that call the vendor to ask them a question, and he can pull up the work order, and he'd be able to see in the activity log the note that says what I need to ask them or whatever. Okay, so that is the vendor who is connected. Really quickly, we're going to create another work order. So here's an example of some special instructions that we were testing with here. So I don't know if those have been transferred to the live site or not. So in this case, this was just some questions that were put in for this particular task that I selected. So it's telling me to make specific notes about this item. So I type in my description. That fills in this description box. I hit next. I'm going to change the owner on this. All right, so now we've got a work order. Created. Now we've got to send this to a not connected vendor. Okay, so we found the vendor that we're going to assign it to, and they are not connected. Okay, so ABC Company is my vendor that needs to do this job for me. I see that they're not connected, so this changes the work order process a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to assign this to ABC Company. When I click on Save, it'll be assigned to them. Now, because they're not connected, they are not going to be able to control the status of the work order. And so we're still going to be sending this work order to them, but once we get confirmation from them that they have that they will do the work, then we're going to be responsible for picking up or accepting this work order and changing the status from new to open. Okay, so that's a difference between connected and non-connected. If they're connected, they're going to control the status once they've accepted the work order all the way through to completion. If they're not connected, this is a time where I'm probably going to call them, make sure they can take the call. So I put in my notes about talking with them. I still want to come in here and potentially set an NTE for them. I'm still going to send off the work order. Now this will send it to whatever email address we have on file for ABC Company who's not connected. If there isn't one, then you will have to fill that in or find an email address. I can also type over this, so I can change this address that I'm going to send it to. So if they gave me a different address to send the details, then I can do that. Now you can see that this still sends the same information. It also sends off an attachment, so one of the work order templates with additional information.
Can you send it to more than one email? Like semicolon?
I
Or
honestly,
do you have to just one email?
I don't, I
What's
think
an
it's
example
just
of what
one
you said?
email there, but
Like sometimes I'll talk to somebody over the phone and they want me to send it to their dispatch, but they also want me to copy them so that they can get a copy and go ahead and work on getting it.
That happens all the time.
Or a project manager in there.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay.
no,
Okay.
it'll only let me do one email address. What I can do though, so let me send this back off because I recalled it. What I can do though is there is message here. So on this one, I can choose, it's automatically going to default to ABC Company with their email address. I think in this one, it will let me add additional emails into the send message. So when I send it to them, it's just going to go to one email address, but when I do message, I can add multiple ones.
Okay.
Now, if we're gonna do that and we have to send like one that's got the NTE and all of that to multiple people, will we then need to manually type all of that in underneath the message column?
So the vendors who are not connected receive this form automatically. So this is when I sent the service request, this is the message I got.
Right, now if I
Okay.
need a second person, what would we do next?
A second sub or a second person at the same sub?
Like, if that is
An
what went
alternate
to
email
your
address.
office, but then I need to get to the sub that's out in the field, how do I forward that to him? So
I'll
I'm
just-
saying, where do
Oh,
I
like
go
PDF.
to forward that in the message column?
So when I do send message, I can choose to send it to ABC Company at the email address they've listed, or I can send it to any other email address or addresses from send message. This will also allow me to
But
choose a template to send with it.
So if I've already sent the work order to the office, I can then, but I also need to send it to another person that's out in the field, I can then go into this message, put in the secondary email address, and select the work order so that way they can see the work order as well.
Yeah, so this
Okay.
template,
I think-
LR vendor work order, is the template that goes out automatically. And so if you choose that attachment, then the person you send it to will also get this attachment.
The exact same thing.
And then we just put in the NT and stuff like that in the,
In the ticket, and the document's going to capture what was put in the work order.
gotcha.
Yeah, it's already a part of this template that goes out, but you could certainly add that to the message. I mean, you can type whatever you wanted here. So if you wanted to call out key points like copying the work description and the NTE, you could certainly put that in there so it will be the text of the email that goes
Messages
out.
to yourself.
Okay.
Do we get an automatic copy of that once it gets sent out or no?
No,
Or is
it goes
it saved
into
in
the
the ticket?
action log. So here you can see a message was sent. The comments show me what I typed into that box. And if I click on the view, it will show me who I addressed that message to.
Can we open the attachment?
Yeah, can you open do we have access to open the attachment, or is it saved somewhere within the system?
The
So we
attach
can just forward it to another person if we need?
So the attachment is just a print template. So when I go to print options, here's LR vendor work order. And if I click on print, that will open this up for me.
So it'd be the same one that we sent to them, or is it the new?
No, it's the same one.
Same one.
So this,
Okay,
so
so that
this
way if I'm
template,
going to look up, say, hey, this is where it is, we can look it together. Okay.
so I mean, these templates are like real time. So it's not like once I've ran this template once, it saves it. If there's any fields that have changed in this, so right now it's showing the $150 not to exceed that I put in here. But if I had changed the description that's down here for what the request is, then the next time I pull this form, it will reflect, whatever fields have been updated. If I put in a scheduled start time or a specific PO number or change the contact or something, then that would be reflected in these fields because this is being pulled from the work order in real time.
Now, if I up the NTE, let's say we started at 250, they call in, they need to go up to 500. I approve it, I go into the work order and I change the NTE to 500. Does it automatically send a new work order to the vendor with a new NTE on it?
If the vendor is connected and you increase the NTE, the vendor will be automatically notified.
What about if they're not connected?
If they're not connected, then no, you would have to send them a message.
Yeah, nothing will be automatic if they're not
If
connected.
they're not connected, it's not automatic.
So I just change the NTE, send a new message, and they'll get the attachment with
Okay,
the new.
updated document, yeah.
Yeah, in that case, your message on that message is probably going to be the NTE has been increased to $250.
Yeah, you can say book,
Because you wouldn't want to rely on them to just review the document to see that it's changed, because it might not be obvious to them that, unless they were specifically waiting for that, it wouldn't necessarily be obvious to them that that's contained within the attachment.
And we can also change the scope of work when we do that if they're not connected or connected. So if we have a specific, instead of troubleshoot exterior lights, because this many is out, I can say, please change 596-inch, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, it's like it's live. So basically anything you do, it'll automatically update all of the paperwork kind of that's connected to that work order, yeah.
all right,
Yeah,
go ahead,
so-
Kristen, thanks.
So on this one, the not connected vendor, when they confirmed for me that they were going to do the work, I need to actually perform the pickup. So you can see that that's the thumbs up is the pickup. That's the next logical action on this work order. Normally, if the vendor is connected, they would do that when they accept the work order. Since these guys are not connected, I want to change the status. And so when I click on this, I get this warning saying, hey, you're not ABC company. Are you sure you want to do that? And yes, I do, because they're not connected. And I can type in a note that will go into the action log if I wanted to. So so then I can pick it up, and now the status will be open, so I know that that one's, going along through the process. So then for your connected vendor, I'm just going to flip over to the vendor system so we can look at this work order. So the vendor has picked it up. If they go out on site, sorry, Freddie, who I emailed on that message, was asking me if he needed to do anything, so I'm just telling him no. Okay, so the vendor, on their side of the system, they have the work order details, so they see the problem. They have the ability to submit a quote. So if they see that you've given them a $250 NTE and that's not going to be enough, they would submit a quote through the system. Okay, so I can come in here and put in a quote and say we need, $600, and I can type in a description. So I submit my quote, you guys would get flagged on the work order. That there's now a quote.
Could you show us real quick how to, say we need to add like a second vendor to this ticket, how to do
No,
that?
don't worry about that.
No?
No, you don't want me to show.
Yeah, don't worry about that right now.
Okay.
No, that's okay.
Okay, so here you can see this work order is flagged and the flag reason quote submitted. And so now my quote is in the vendor quote section waiting for approval. So if I want to view the details of that quote, the quote will open up. Here's what the vendor typed over to me, and I'd be able to reject or approve it. you know, since they're connected. And so if I approve this quote, and this will, approval limits are based on your role. So if I don't have the authority to click the approve button and I do click the approve button, it'll give me a message to deny me. But if I want to approve this for the vendor, when I approve the quote submitted by the vendor, that will automatically increase the NTE of the work order to the quoted amount. And that logs this all here in the system in the action log. And the vendor will get notified that their quote was approved. So here they've got or rejected. So now as the vendor, I can come in and clear my flag, and now I'd be able to submit an invoice for up to $600. They can also add messages. So if I come in here and add a note, then that will flag the work order as well. That's not the work order number. So here I see this is flagged with message received. So I'd be able to go into the log. They had to order the tiles, so I can say, okay, there's nothing else I need to do about that, and I can just come up here and clear the flag. Or I could send a message back to the vendor and say, no, yes, okay, great. So I can message them back. Once I've taken whatever action from the flag, though, I'm going to go ahead and clear this flag. So then the vendor would complete the work order when the job is done. And so they're going to type in their notes of what they did. And then that work order will be marked completed status. And so we have a to-do on this to check for completion after the due by date. So we would be able to see, we could check off our to-do item. We know it's completed. And then we're going to see in the completion and verification section, here's the completion note. And then I would be able to contact this actual location and do the verification with them. So if I want to...
Now,
Hold on. Willie.
now, when I saw on the vendor side where they can add attachments, I'm guessing that's for pictures, quotes, and things like that. Let's say they add pictures. Where will that pop up on our view?
That goes into the document section.
Go ahead.
Oh, so this is just for connected vendors, right?
No.
This
Well,
is
that, yeah, that would be good.
So when non-connected vendors, are we still doing it, the always getting
They'll
pictures?
have to send you an email, yeah.
Now, my second question is this. Let's say a connected vendor says that it's completed, and the store says it is, but I look at the pictures and there's something wrong, something that I catch. Can I then put this back to the vendor saying, no, this isn't completed, and change the status so that the vendor knows that they need to go back and fix it?
You could reopen the work order at that point.
And I can send a message with them saying, no, this needs to be
Would
done.
she be able to, or that would be management level?
I think
Or
reopen.
we don't know that.
I think reopen is at all levels.
Okay, thank you.
So here's where the picture, this came over from the vendor that they attached. So here I have the ability to see that. If I was on the non-connected vendor work order, then that one I could add documents myself. So I'd be able to choose the files from wherever I have them saved. So when I call the location to verify completion and I want to perform that, I click on these two check boxes. I'll select a rating. So we have negative, neutral, not completed, and positive. So positive, negative, neutral mean the job got done, but it's the satisfaction rating with the vendor. Then you have not completed. When you complete this rating for a connected vendor, when you add this information along with the notes, the vendor will get this feedback. So if I was to call the location and they said this was not completed, I could set that as my satisfaction rating. And so I can put that, put that message in. This verification can always be updated. So if they go back out and replace that other tile, then I can change that back to a neutral rating. So here you can see this is the message that came over to the vendor. So it told me that you gave me a not completed rating. So if I'm a good vendor who's connected, I see that and go take care of it without you ever having to reopen the work order, right? A negative not completed verification also is a flag on the work order.
The system rates all the subs
Yeah.
automatically based on their time response. Messages like that are put in. You don't put in there a 1 through 10. It's just how they're processed.
So if you need your manager to look at something or like whatever, that's what I was going to ask, but when you're putting it in like the to-do list or flagging it, is it keeping it in your name and just letting your manager know that they need to look at it, or is it actually putting it in your manager's name?
So I think the work order I think we've decided the owner of the work order is always going to be the person who's working on it. So if you're going to flag it, I would think that the flag reasons should express, like we should have a flag reason that says needs manager review or something like that.
Yeah.
And then that manager can be monitoring the flags that come in for that or alternately, you guys could choose to do it as a to-do, and when you set up a to-do, you should be able to assign that to anyone else. So, I can...
But Jason could reassign it to somebody that needed to be.
Like before it's sick, yeah. So we're gonna have to flag them whenever.
Hey, don't be putting it in my name.
Now, and once we do that, we can put a note, like, let's say I'm doing this and I hit save, will it allow me to give a note on that says, like, or Jason, let's say, hey, Jason, can you please take a look at this picture and tell me if this is what's going on, so that I don't have to physically get up and go talk to him?
Use the message feature. Any email address that you want to send that to. Jason, look at the pictures here.
Do we have our address book or internal address book imported into Kariga?
It's not, and it's not currently an option, although I do have a change request in. I have that request from several customers. I don't know if and when that might be an addition to the system. So at this time, you just have to type in the email address you want to send it to.
Yeah, that would be hard to do.
Yeah, so I know we show the ability here to attach the pictures along with a template, and those should get emailed right along with this message. Jason advised me that this wasn't happening. We tested it yesterday, and so there is a ticket in for a resolution on that. I think they discovered that it was in fact a problem. So I don't know the resolution on that. So
okay, thank you.
Actually, I think they said that it's only not sending documents that had been attached by vendors. If I had attached this document from within the database, then I email it. It looks like those are going through. So it's something weird that's happening. So just FYI.
So it might be like a security thing or something.
Yeah, so they're working to fix that. So anyway, so you could send a message, which would be an email, hey, take a look at this work order. So this just sent me a message. So as Jason, look at the pictures on this work order. It gets that attachment that I chose. so I can see the work order number. I probably want to put that in the message. It doesn't necessarily go out on the alert. But he'll come in, look at the work order. He can see all of your notes and everything, look at the pictures, and then decide what to do. So if you needed to do something other than a flag, you needed to get someone's attention by emailing them, use the message feature. Okay, this work order that is, let's go back and find, where's ABC Company? I don't think this is the one we were just working on, but okay, so here, let's get open this one. Okay, so here's the work order that we are working on, ABC Company. So if they contact me and tell me the job has been done, so they're probably either going to do that via phone or email since they're not connected, right? Or you calling them to follow up. So since they're not connected, if they tell me the work order is completed, then I'm going to need to go in and complete the work order. So perform the completion action. So it just pops me up a window. Here's the description of the work. These are the completion notes. So I want to try to get some information to fill in there if possible. So if they emailed me what was done, or I talked to them and they said they, replaced the tiles and did the painting, I can type those in as my notes, and then I click on complete. And so now the work order is in completed status. Now, since this is a non-connected vendor, maybe once I heard from the vendor before I marked the work order completed, you might want to do the verification, although you really can't set the verification rating until the work order gets marked as completed. So just know that those steps you complete the work order, then the verification, although you might want to make sure the store is going to say that that's okay before you complete it out so you don't have to reopen it. So those are things that you can do in the work order process. Okay, are there any questions? Anything else that you wanted me to cover in the next few minutes?
I don't think so.
You can order some pizza.
For y'all, yeah. Okay. Yeah. As of now, yeah.
Will I have all our contact information on the messages that we send, or is it just going to be like a?
I saw where she selected signature, so it'll be like our signature.
Oh, okay.
The message.
Automate a lot of.
Yeah, the message is go out from, I believe the email address is set up to be your guys' group email there, whatever your Lone Rover email address is.
Sure.
And then, like I said, she's like a signature and
Courtney and.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll set, yeah. Yep. But it may not say Courtney, it may just be generic.
Okay.
Yeah, generic.
I just want to make sure that they can
Generic out there.
Yeah, if you use the send message feature and you need them to contact you back specifically, you'll probably want to put that into your message.
Okay, got it. That was all.
I think that's generic.
Yeah, that can be something you just have readily available to copy and paste from a document, right? So you don't have to type it every time.
Yeah.
Other questions?
No, I think we're good, Kristen. I'm sure there's more questions, yeah, but we'll go over it and list them.
All right.
You're awesome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, guys. I'll let you know when the recordings are available, Gib.